In the shadows of the city, under the veil of a stormy night, two souls met in the most unexpected and dangerous of circumstances. Their names were Elena and Adrian, both seeking something they couldn't define, but were drawn to the abyss of the unknown, like moths to a flame. What neither of them realized was that their lives would intertwine in ways they couldn't predict, all because of a dark, mysterious faith that had bound them together. It was late at night when Elena decided to take the long, quiet path through the woods near her house. She had always been a fan of solitude, the silence of nature comforting her in ways the bustling city couldn't. Her dark hair flowed behind her as she walked, lost in thought. But that evening, something felt different. The air was thick with tension, the rustling of leaves sounded louder than usual, and she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was following her. Adrian had been watching her for days. It wasn't an obsession, at least not in the traditional sense. He had come to the woods seeking answers about the dark force that had been haunting him for years. The strange dreams, the voices whispering in his ear, the overwhelming feeling of dread, it was all part of something bigger, something he didn't yet understand. And somehow, he knew that Elena was the key. Their paths crossed on the narrow bridge that cut through the heart of the woods. Elena, startled by the figure in front of her, took a step back. Adrian's cold, piercing gaze met hers, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. It wasn't the first time their eyes had met. They had encountered each other in passing in the city, but tonight was different. There was something unspoken between them, a connection neither of them could explain. "Are you lost?" Elena asked, her voice shaky. Adrian didn't respond immediately. He wasn't sure if he could trust her, if he could explain the weight he carried on his shoulders. But something in her eyes told him that she might understand. "No," he replied quietly, his voice like gravel. "But I might be looking for something." Elena tilted her head, curiosity piqued. "Looking for what?" "Something I can't explain," Adrian said, his eyes darkening as if the very mention of it brought a storm to his soul. Before Elena could ask more, the wind picked up, howling through the trees. Adrian looked toward the horizon, as though sensing something in the air. "You should go back to the city," he said suddenly, his tone urgent. "There's danger here." Elena frowned, but the pull in her chest was undeniable. She wasn't sure why, but she listened to him. "And you?" she asked. "I have my own journey to finish." The next few days were a blur for Elena. She couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious man in the woods. His words echoed in her mind, but it was more than that. There was an undeniable pull, an instinct to find out what he was hiding. She couldn't shake the feeling that her life had become entangled with his in some strange, almost supernatural way. When Elena decided to search for Adrian again, it wasn't by accident. Something inside her, something primal, led her back to the woods. But this time, she wasn't alone. She felt like someone was guiding her, as though the forest itself was pushing her toward him. It was almost as if fate had intertwined their lives. She found him at the same bridge, standing with his back to her, staring into the distance. The moment he heard her footsteps, he turned, his expression unreadable. "Why are you here?" Adrian asked, his voice cold but not unkind. I need to understand," Elena admitted, stepping closer. "What's happening here? Why do I feel like we're connected?" Adrian studied her, his dark eyes searching for signs of vulnerability. "You don't know what you're asking. There's a darkness following me. A faith that I can't escape." Elena was silent for a moment, the air around them heavy with the weight of his words. "What do you mean by faith?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He took a deep breath, knowing that once he started, there would be no turning back. "I've been chosen for something dark. Something ancient. There are forces at work, Elena, forces that want to control me. But they won't stop at just me." A shiver ran down Elena's spine. "You're not making sense. What forces?" "The dark faith," Adrian said, almost as if the words were a curse on his tongue. "It's an ancient cult, one that believes in the power of darkness, of controlling the elements, of bending the will of others. I was born into it, but I broke free. Or at least, I thought I did." Elena's heart raced. She had heard whispers of cults, of dark rituals, but never anything like this. "And they're after you." "They never left me," Adrian admitted. "Their reach is long. They use fear, manipulation, and love. They'll do anything to bring me back." Elena felt her chest tighten. She wasn't sure why, but she believed him. And despite the danger, she found herself wanting to help him. There was something about him, something tragic and raw, that she couldn't ignore. "Then I'm not leaving you," she said, surprising even herself with the words. "I'll help you fight it." Adrian looked at her, his expression torn between gratitude and fear. "You don't know what you're saying. The dark faith will use you against me. You'll be a pawn in their game." "I don't care," she replied, her voice fierce. "I won't let them have you." Days turned into weeks, and the closer Elena and Adrian became, the more the dark forces that pursued them grew stronger. Strange things began to happen, shadows that seemed to move on their own, whispers in the dark, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. But the most unsettling part was the dreams. At night, Elena would wake up, drenched in sweat, her heart pounding in her chest, as if she had just been part of a terrifying ritual. Adrian, too, had his own share of nightmares. The dark faith had never stopped haunting him, and their attempts to draw him back into their fold grew more relentless with each passing day. The connection between him and Elena became both a blessing and a curse. Their love was the one thing that kept the darkness at bay, but it was also the one thing that could destroy them both. One fateful night, as they stood on the edge of the woods, the wind howling around them, Adrian turned to Elena with a look of finality in his eyes. "You need to leave," he said, his voice trembling. "If you stay, they will use you against me. They'll hurt you. To get to me." Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she stood her ground. "I'm not leaving you, Adrian. We'll fight them together." But as they stood there, a figure emerged from the shadows cloaked in black, with a sinister smile on his face. It was a man Elena recognized from her dreams, one who had haunted her for weeks. The leader of the dark faith. "You should have listened to him, Elena," the man said, his voice cold and mocking. "It's too late now. You're already part of the game." With those words, the darkness consumed them both. And the heart of the forest, the final confrontation began. The cult leader and his followers circled around Elena and Adrian, their chants rising into the night sky. The air was thick with the power of the dark faith, and yet, in that moment, Elena felt something shift within her. Adrian reached for her hand, his eyes filled with desperation. "Elena, you have to trust me." "I trust you," she whispered. Together, they fought back against the cult's influence, using the power of their love, their unyielding faith in each other, to break the chains that bound them. The darkness recoiled, but the battle was far from over. In a final act of defiance, Adrian stepped forward, facing the cult leader. "You'll never control me again," he said, his voice strong. "We'll end this together." And with that, the shadows that had once consumed them both faded, leaving only the light of their love. The storm finally cleared, and the sun began to rise over the city. Elena and Adrian stood side by side, the weight of their struggle lifting from their shoulders. They had faced the darkness, and together, they had overcome it. Their bond, forged in the fires of fear and love, had proven stronger than the forces that tried to tear them apart. And as the first light of dawn broke through the trees, they knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together.